Hey guys, this is Tom Box, and today it's all about how to beat them Fire Kings. Yes, they're the fresh new deck on the block, and they're looking for some success. Well, we're not gonna just serve it to them on a platter. They're gonna have to work for it, so we're going to counter them, straight out of the gate. So make sure you guys hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe, ding that notification bell. I don't really want to talk too long. I have a sword in my mouth. Feels like squeezing lemon juice into an open wound every time I speak, so let's just get to it. Okay, for this video, I'm going to cover the basic weaknesses, hand trap, choke points, things that you should be hitting with hand traps, different types of hand traps, and also tech cards you can use, maybe adjust your side deck for. Now, if you want to learn how the deck works and functions and you want to break it apart yourself, you can check out the combo guide and the combo profile in the previous video, and I'll leave a link down in the description. Okay, so anyways, let's get into the basic weaknesses. This deck is super graveyard reliant. They have a destruction and a center graveyard trigger. If you're missing one, then you don't get the effect. Kieran, Arvada, Ponix, they are all based off of that. Okay, so if you don't want them to get their best effect, don't destroy their cards and don't send it to the graveyard. That's the best thing. Non-destructive removal might be your best bet, but one thing to keep in mind, be very careful of them going into the battle phase and just crashing their fire monsters, because a lot of them will be able to trigger, and that's very, very dangerous. For choke points, in the early phases, the whole point is to get into Fire King Island and let the Fire King Island resolve once. That's the key setup of the entire deck. Without that, there's really not much of a Fire King deck. So Ponix, Searching, and Fire King Island, those are the cards that you should be attempting to stop. In the mid game, they're going to be more focused on trying to destroy something to get the trigger of the Garunix back. So the focus should now be on stopping Fire King Island, namely the destruction part of it. The second thing you should be trying to stop would be Skybur or Kieran. If they successfully land a destruction, just be ready to handle the follow-up that's coming from the graveyard, and then you should be really set, because it's really easy to read them after that. Ash Blossom, Joyous Spring. Arvada can negate Ash, so you might need a second hand trip when it comes to this scenario, especially if the first summon is Arvada and they just go into like the Sinful Spoil line to get the additional cards, or they have Fire King Island activation right away. Very difficult to stop if that's the case. Fire King Island should be the top priority hit during the early phases of this, because you can stop the Sacred Fire King Garunix from being added, which means there's less follow-up, there's less graveyard disruption when you try to start playing against them on your own turn. In the case that you couldn't really stop that, Sacred Fire King Garunix should be your secondary hit. It's just a very good card to hit because it cuts off Kieran, cuts off Arvada, cuts off Barong. They just don't get the follow-up, especially when Sacred Fire King Garunix gets hit. It's really important. But again, this card, if they manage to put it back into the graveyard because they made an SP, just remember that there's a lot of layer disruption that can occur because of this. And also, this card can get chain blocked. If they're playing Tri Brigade, likely it's going to be Chainlink 1, Garunix, Chainlink 2, a Tri Brigade monster. It's kind of annoying, okay? It's not that easy. Then there is the legendary Fire King Ponix. On a normal summon, you can try to hit this, but I would only recommend hitting this if you have 2 hand traps, okay? Only 2 hand traps you would do it, or if you have a drone lockboard, that's fine too, but only 2 hand traps. Otherwise, they can bait it with Ponix, and then they play Fire King Island, blow it up anyway. Now you just let them set up for free. So that's why the Ponix is only a 2 hand trap scenario, because then in that case, you would actually be able to stop this and the Fire King Island. Next, Infinite Impermanence. Well, you can't hit the Fire King Island, but you can hit the next best things. The Sacred Fire King Garunix. You just have to hit the same reason as Ash. Don't let them get to the Kieran line, the Arvada line, or any of the Barong lines. You just want to stop everything available. They will dodge with Circle of the Fire King if they have it. It's like Sword Soul with their Heavenly Dragon Circle. Feels very similar to that. And they do get a free monster out, so it's pretty sick. So you should be hitting with the Imperm. It should be pretty decent if you do, because it does cut the line if it works. Then there's Garunix Eternity. When they go on the offensive, you probably want to stop this from losing all your monster, for one. Secondly, it also blows up one of your back row like a Tornado Dragon. You probably want to stop that as well. So that's thanks to the Imperm. Again, Circle the Fire King, even Fire King Island would probably activate and destroy this card. If it has Xyz material under it, for each one it had on destruction, it will summon back a Fire King from the graveyard, equal to the amount of material it had, so it can get back 2 monsters. So you could still die after the fact. I don't know how you feel about that, so that's another read you have to make, whether or not you can survive the onslaught coming. Yeah, it's pretty scary. And then there's the Fire King, Avatar, Arvada, and Rangbali. You might have to preemptively negate them or trade 1-for-1 with the Imperm for this, just so that you can have a safer line to go through later on. Like, if you have multiple Imperms, you probably want to stop them anyway, because there's not much you can really do. I'm just saying, you just want to have the better timing regardless. Additional cards you're going to get with Imperm, we have Access Code Talker. If you make the read that they're going to the Selene Access Code combo and you only have one hand trap, like sometimes negating Selene still gets you killed because they're still going to Access Code. So your best bet is to actually negate Access Code, because Access Code plus, you know, a 3k Garunix, you're still going to get hit pretty hard. Then there's also Zeus, another thing that they can, you know, end on, just in case they cracked your board, you want to clap back. You probably need an Imperm in your hand, don't waste it. Especially when they're only going into that play. Maybe just let them wipe your board and then you can actually fight back. Otherwise, Zeus is going to end your turn. Then there's also Legendary Fire King Ponix. Again, the condition is on the normal summon and you still need an Ash for the Fire King Island. That's the only case you would make that play. I'm not even sure if it's worth to make that play. Maybe you should conserve for the Fire King Island and the Garunix together. Who knows? Or maybe you can just save it just Fire King Island. Okay, but like, only if you have Ash you would even bother negating the Ponix. But there is a reason to negate Ponix on the second turn going in. If they're going for a search and the search is likely going to be Skybur and Skyburn's going to wreck your board, yes, negate the Ponix so that you don't have to eat that and lose all your cards. Okay, that's a fair point. Next in the lineup, Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. The first thing you should be trying to stop in every single possible case has to be Fire King Avatar Kirin. Otherwise, you have to learn how to deal with the follow-up that comes after that, which is a lot more problematic. This is one of their most high-value plays available, which is to destroy it, summon another card back, which could be another negation, and also destroying a card non-targeting. Two non-targeting effects. It's very difficult to stop, and it can also be chain block. If you use Fire King Island destroying the Kirin, in the hand, adding Garunix can be chain linked to the Kirin's chain link 1. Very difficult to stop. And whenever that card lands and resolves, usually there's some level of advantage that could swing the entire momentum back and forth. And it's just very difficult. Next, there's Eternity Garunix. This card is a card you have to attempt to stop. Not much to say. I think stopping the Fire King Island is more important, because if they use Fire King Island to destroy Eternity Garunix, you have a huge problem. You're not going to be able to use Ghost Bell on this. Ghost Bell can't really negate something that is going to be chain block, because they're going to go chain link 1 Eternity Garunix, chain link 2 they're going to use Sacred Fire. Now you have a problem, because that's going to summon back 2 monsters, and the Garunix is going to summon back, and now they have an OTK on their hand. So this is something that you should attempt to stop whenever you can. Hopefully it's not Fire King Island that's doing the dirty work. Then there is Arvada and the Sacred Fire Garunix. If it's going to activate in the graveyard, if they did something to, you know, allow it to summon back from the graveyard, then of course just immediately use a Ghost Bell to stop this. But chain blocking makes Ghost Bell a lot weaker. But that doesn't mean that Ghost Bell is completely useless. For the Selene Access Code OTK, you can use it to stop them from summoning back their Diabell Star, their effect failures, stuff along those lines. And then the Circle of the Fire Kings, just immediately just chain to it, block the destruction. It's mainly to block the destruction more than anything, because if it's a copy of Eternity Garunix, or they're just trying to set up a Sacred Fire in the graveyard, then Ghost Bell will do a really good job of just preventing all of that. I'm not even sure if you can just stop everything, but it's better than nothing. And if they play Rekindling, stop that too. Next in the lineup, we have Joel and Lockbird. There's 2 key choke points for Joel. One is Legendary Fire King Ponix, and the other one is Fire Formation Tenki. If it's a normal summon of the Fire King or not, it doesn't matter. You should throw a Joel and Lockbird on it, because it prevents the Fire King Island from destroying and adding, which is huge, which cancels the Garunix line. Fire Formation Tenki is used to add Arvada, so if they add Arvada into hand, you're going to have to throw the Joel anyway, and that's good, because before the summon of Arvada, you're not going to get negated. So there you go. Now there is one other point, but this is a later turn. I'm not sure if it's going to be that effective, but I did get hit with it during testing, which is Original Sinful Spoil Snake Eye. No, not the summoning effect, the other effect, where you banish this from the graveyard, putting Diabell Star back into the bottom of the deck to add 1 to hand. So that would be a point. I think that is usually catching someone on a misplay, because they use this instead of Fire King Island first. If they use Fire King Island first, this shouldn't even be an issue, but that is another point. And moving on to the final set of hand traps, these are really good ones. First of all, D-Shifter, just do it in draw phase, standby phase, just don't just do it before the Arvada gets summoned. And that one hurts a lot because, again, everything needs to hit the graveyard. DD Crow is also very strong against taking out the Sacred Garunix, but also Arvada, or depending on what Kieran is going to summon back. Because if Kieran doesn't summon back a card, it doesn't get to destroy. If there's a limited amount of stuff in the graveyard, then yeah, hitting them with DD Crow. Because if they summon from the hand instead, then what's going to happen is that they lose a little bit of hand resource. Okay, and normally they don't want to do that unless the card they're summoning is Arvada. And there's also Skullmeister, but this card kind of gets screwed by chain blocks as well. It's kind of the same thing as the Ghost Bell. So just keep that in mind. Okay, for tech cards, we have Super Poly and anti-graveyard cards. Super Poly, Garura, Mudragon, self-explanatory. There are points where you can do it, but it's usually only better for disruption rather than actually using them to break a board. Their board could end on SP plus Arvada or Deco Takahitsu. It could be very minimalistic, and the materials for Super Poly would just not be there immediately. You might have to commit one additional card to get there. Alright, but if you're pushing for a game, then yeah, sure, Super Poly is pretty good. Sometimes they're going to leave an Arvada Rangbali, which is a little bit greedy, but it does provide them with a monster negation and a spell trap negation, and if they have destruction based follow-up, then they can follow up to either go into a free overlay play and then nuke your entire board, or they can go into a Garunix play and just keep on putting out more monsters on the field and destroying the card. There's just so many options for them to get 4 levels of disruption just leaving fire monsters. In that case, Super Poly can benefit. Into the graveyard, starting with Soul Release. OCG has been seeing play with this card, and it removes every single fire monster possible. Maybe you leave one for Hita, but taking away all of their graveyard trigger is very, very crucial so that you don't eat a Garunix. So the destruction is a lot safer, no follow-up action, there's no strings attached on the destruction, which is great. That's what we're looking for. So Soul Release, definitely a pretty awesome card. It got used against me once, and I was really upset that my Kieran really didn't do anything anymore. That part really hurt. And then there is Silent Graveyard. If you want to shut out the graveyard, then if you're going to be going first, you can set it just to stun out the graveyard so they don't get any of their setup. But if you're going to be going second and trying to play into a board, which is also fair, just keep in mind that if you're going to be playing this card, make sure that you're not going to be a graveyard reliant deck. Okay, just saying. This deck shuts down Garunix, Kieran, Ponix, Arvada. Everything is pretty huge. You can use Dweller or Gravekeeper Inscription as an alternative to Silent Graveyard, but Silent Graveyard being a quick effect is just really, really good. Yeah, you can even buy the proper timing just in case. You can use one of your own effects first, and then you can let your opponent try to use theirs and just cancel them out. And alternatively, we can also just play different Dimension Ground. All right, if they summon out Rangbali first, okay, you're screwed. If you're gonna go for the greedy play, you can wait for them to activate a destruction effect, and then you chain this card so that the card gets destroyed and gets banished. Alternatively, Macro, Cosmos, Deez, Fissure, they all work the same. And that's it for all of the basics on how to beat Fire Kings. Honestly, it's not too difficult, but you gotta be aware of the intentions of what your opponent is trying to do. The battle phase is one of the more surprising parts because Circle the Fire King during the battle phase can just suddenly take game. You can't be too conservative with your resources when it comes to their battle phase. This is an aggro deck. They're known to be able to push super, super hard. Now, on the other hand, if there's anything I'm missing, you guys feel free to leave it down in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on other areas to counter, or maybe certain areas that are not as effective. People are now learning to play around. Well, let me know down in the description. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck in your tournament out there. Wish you the best of luck, and I'll see you all in the next one. Happy holidays.